Hello everyone, and I'm really glad that you're able to join us today for this webinar that's all about Covidence's Data Extraction 1 tool. And this particular tool is optimized for intervention systematic reviews and for Cochrane reviews. Now, I'm sure that you are aware that data extraction is probably the hardest part of your systematic review or any review that you're working on. And so hopefully by the end of this webinar, you're going to see how Covidence's Data Extraction 1 tool can really help you make that whole process a little bit smoother and easier for you. Now, Extraction 1 has undergone a whole load of amazing updates over the last few months and even the last couple of days, and it's now much more flexible for you, so you can add a lot more customization to Data Extraction 1 while still maintaining that intervention review structure, which is really important. So my name is Julie Brown. I'm a community manager with Covidence and I'm based in New Zealand. And I'm joined today by Razia, who's my colleague, and she is also a community manager based in Canada. Now, Razia is going to be busy answering any questions that you might pose during the webinar. Now, there are an awful lot of you on the webinar today, so if we're not able to answer the questions during the webinar, then I'll respond to you by email afterwards. Now, today's session is being run in a standard webinar mode, and that means that all attendees are muted during the webinar itself, but you can ask questions at any time at all by using the questions box that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. So just drop us questions in there. We'd love to hear who you are, and where you're based to begin with, so that we can find out a little bit more about you. The webinar is recorded, and so anyone who's registered will receive a link to the recording by email, and you'll get that within the next 24 hours. Before I jump into the webinar itself, I'll just give a little bit of context about Covidence for those of you that aren't familiar with the platform. Covidence is a not-for-profit organisation that was created by and for the research community, and its aim is to help you streamline the process of your systematic review, right from where you create your review itself, all the way through importing references, screening, data extraction, which is what we're here to talk about today, all the way through to exporting your data. Now, that streamlining process means that you can save an awful lot of time in your review whilst maintaining the quality of the review itself. It's entirely cloud-based. Covidence is cloud-based, so there's nothing to download and there are no versions to worry about. We've got a full-time team that work around the world to provide you with technical support and with the support from the community team as well. And as you can see, we've got the world's largest review community with over 400,000 users around the world. So this is what we're going to cover today. Going to go through basically what data extraction is, why it's important, and then I'm going to do a series of demos for you. I'm going to look at the Extraction 1 template and how to get that set up. Then I'm going to show you what that looks like for the extractor, so as an extraction form, and then I'll show you what the data looks like when you export it for your analysis or synthesis. So I'm just going to launch a poll. So here we go. I'd really like to find out if you've used Extraction 1 before in your Covidence review. So just if you can answer that poll. Give you a moment or two to answer that. And just while that poll's going on, if you have used Extraction 1 and you'd like to share your experiences with us, then just drop a comment into that questions box for us and tell us about your experiences. It's great to see so many people joining as well while that poll's going on. We've got people from all over the place, lots of people from Canada, Australia, USA joining us, so welcome. Okay, I'm going to close that poll now. And so we can see that 14% of you have used Extraction 1 before, 79% haven't used it, and a couple of you, I'm not sure whether you've used Extraction 1. You may well have used Extraction 2. So thank you very much for that. And we'll carry on with what is data extraction. So data extraction itself, for those of you that might want a bit more information, it's about the collecting and organizing of the data that you want to collect from your included studies. And that data you can then use for your analysis and synthesis or writing the narrative summary part of your systematic review. And the best way to do that is by using a template and an extraction form. And I really recommend that you think about your data extraction template early on in the review process. A lot of teams will get their data extraction template ready as part of their protocol if you are going to have a review protocol. But think about it really early on. It's going to help the whole review process. It's going to save you time and it will reduce bias in your review as well. Now, the purpose of the form is to capture the data that you want and only the data that you want. You don't want to be spending an awful lot of time collecting extraneous information that you're never going to use. So make sure that the form is focused on what you want to collect. And there's a great quote there by Cochrane, that a good data collection form should minimize the need to go back to the source documents. So you don't want to keep going back to the PDFs when you're doing your analysis. You want all the information there in one place. So Covidence can help you set up that kind of logical and well-structured data extraction template. And in Extraction 1, we provide you with a template outline, if you like, in a standardized form. And you're able to use that and adapt it and add those little customized sections. But the basic steps for data extraction are that you need to decide what data you want to capture. And as I've said, that's often done at the protocol stage. You need to create a well-structured and easy to use template. You don't want things to be too complicated, nice and easy, and that will avoid errors being made by your data extractors. Pilot it. It's always good to get a couple of studies and run through your extraction template. That helps you find any mistakes you've made, any fields you might want to add, or if there's data there that you realize you don't need to collect and you can remove. So pilot the template, and then once you're okay with it, you can go ahead, collect the data onto the form. You might need to go back and adjust the template again. Getting the template right is really difficult. I can't imagine that anyone ever gets it right first time. So several adjustments might be needed as you go along. Then you need to go through a process of comparing data. So if you're using two data extractors, you need to look at both sets of data, decide which is the final data, if there are any conflicts, and then you've got your final data set ready to export so that you can do all your analysis. And this is just a kind of a brief summary slide that shows you exactly what Covidence Extraction 1, the tool, is all about. It's aimed at intervention reviews at the moment. It uses structured data collection, and that can be used for meta-analysis. So that's the statistical component of a systematic review if you're using that particular component. Extraction 1 is recommended by Cochrane. It uses a standardized review structure. In this case, it's PICO, and I'll be going through that in the next slide or two. Currently, Extraction 1 uses 2 reviewers for extraction, and it exports into several different file formats. So you can export as a CSV file, an Excel file, or into RevMan, which is the software used by Cochrane Reviews. And I'll be showing you those exports later on in the webinar. But this is briefly what they might look like. They've got a CSV file here and Excel export formats. So I mentioned that Extraction 1 uses a structured format. We use a framework with PICO. So that's population or participants, intervention, comparison, and outcomes. And for the purpose of this webinar, we're going to be using a review about vitamin C for preventing and treating the common cold. So my population are adults, intervention is going to be vitamin C, I'm going to compare it with placebo, and I've got some outcomes of interest there that I'd like to look at. So the number of colds, how long the cold lasts, and the number of fevers, for example. So this is the kind of structure that Extraction 1 is going to use in its template. And what happens is that the template is going to control your data extraction form. So here we can see what the template is going to look like. And the way that that's structured is going to guide the way that you develop your data extraction form and collect your data. So what I'm going to do now is go over to a couple of reviews, and we're going to show you how to develop that template and then what it looks like for the extractor. So I'm just going to swap those over. So this is an active review. And I'm going to go to the extraction section here. Now I've got a study here ready to start data extraction with, but you can see I'm not able to do any data extraction at the moment. There's nothing that I can click on. And I can see here I need to create a template to begin data extraction. So in order to start, we need to create the template. So I'm going to go up here to this blue box where I can create the template. So this is what the template looks like. And you can customize this template in certain sections to fit your specific review needs. And once you're happy with the template, you can click on the Publish Template button here, and that will then make the data extraction form available for those people who are doing data extraction. Now, if you want to come back and update the template because you want to add some additional fields, you can come back here again, make the changes that you need, and click the Publish button again. What happens then is all of the changes that you've made are going to be promoted to all of your included studies. If you've already been extracting data when you come back to make those changes, that's no problem at all. You'll be asked if you want to bring back those studies that you've finished to an incomplete phase, so you can add the data, or you can leave them where they are. If instead of adding new fields, you come back into the template and you delete a field, you're going to get a warning message if you've already collected some data in any studies for that field. And that's there to make sure that you don't accidentally delete data that's been extracted, because that can't be undone. So if you get any warnings pop up, pay attention to them. They're very important. We don't want you to lose any data. So the data extraction template is made up of 5 different sections. We've got identification, methods, population, interventions, and outcomes. And we'll go through each of these. For each of the sections, you'll see that there's a little question mark. If you click on that, you're going to get a pop-up that's designed there to give you some additional information that's visible right there on the screen for you. But there are also links to our knowledge base page. So if you'd clicked on that link, it would take you through to a page that has a little bit more information about each section. So do make use of those. They're there, they're full of useful information for you. The identification section of the template is there to collect information about the studies itself. You might want to capture information about the funding associated with the study, where it was conducted, which country, and settings. So things like, is it a community setting? Is it in a hospital or a school, for example? So that's the kind of information that you can add in there. And then the author contact details. That's important if at some point you need to go back to the primary author and request additional information for them. Now, just going to emphasize that this is the template and this isn't what the data extraction form looks like. So you'll notice that some of these sections are grayed out. We can't make any amendments to these. These are default fields that are in the data extraction form. So you can't amend these, you can't delete them or change them in any way. But we do have additional sections so that you can add any additional information that you want to capture for your specific review. And what we've also done is that based on information from our research and from feedback from our users, we've kind of added in some additional data in different sections to get you started, if you like. So these are items that are available that we think might be useful. But if you don't want them there, you can just use the trash icon and remove them. Okay, so if we don't want end date, we can just click the trash icon, or I can add it back in. Just remove that little bit there. Okay, to add something else here, I can click on that add additional data. It gives me a new field tab. And so I might want to add in some information about study centers, for example, or a trial registration number. So that might be something that I would like in my review. So those become fields within the data extraction form for you. Within the methods, you've got some default fields, again, that you can't amend. In the data extraction form, when we look at it, you'll see that design is a drop-down list of study designs for you to select from, and you can decide if the study design is with parallel groups or if there's a crossover design or some other design you want to capture. Under the additional information section here, this again is another place where you can start adding custom fields for your data extraction form. I'm going to add a couple in here that might be useful, and so just gives you a clue as to what you can add in. So I want to capture things like study aim. I might want to capture information about blinding that's gone on. A unit of analysis I'll add here as well. So this is about randomization, about whether it was a individual people that were randomized, or maybe schools were randomized, or perhaps you might find that it's individual body parts that have been randomized in the study. And I might want to capture items like method of recruitment. So were participants recruited in the community? Were they recruited by newspaper ads? Things like that. Some people like to have in their review. So within the population, this is where we collect information about the inclusion and exclusion criteria, eligibility criteria of participants. Again, this is default. You can't amend this, can't make any changes. You've also got a section on group differences. So this is about capturing any information about if there were differences at baseline between the groups in your study. We've popped in one baseline characteristic for you here, which is mean age. If you don't want that in your review, again, you can use the trash icon and remove it and add the baseline characteristics that you want to capture. So for my study, I might want to capture the percentage of females in the study. I might want to capture body mass index, for example. And you can add as many as you want, as many fields as you wish to. We've also added in some additional information for you here based on our research. So total sample size and the number and reason of withdrawals. And again, you can add as many additional data fields as you want in your review. When you get to the interventions section, this is where you add in information about the intervention and control group or groups. So for my particular review in this template, my intervention is going to be vitamin C, and my control is going to be placebo. If you've got multiple arms that you anticipate, you can add additional intervention arms as well. Intervention characteristics. So here we've added a few bits of information in for you. The dose and frequency, if this was a drug intervention, for example. And you can add as many intervention characteristics that you want to capture as you wish. So I might want to add in information here about route of administration here. So if your intervention was a behavioural intervention, for example, you might want to capture the components of that intervention. And so this is the place where you can do that. And then you've got your outcomes section. So we provide you with an example for continuous data outcome and dichotomous, so that's an event data. You're required to add 3 different components to each outcome. So a name, the type of data that's anticipated, and some time points that you want to capture. So for the outcome, for this particular example, I'm going to put duration of cold in days. It's going to be continuous data, and the time point that I'm going to add here, I'm going to change this to 2 months, for example. Then I'm going to add another outcome, and this time I'm going to add number of colds. Again, this is going to be continuous data, and this time I'm going to have one time point that's 2 months. And I'm going to add another time point here, really easy to do, 6 months. So those are time points that are going to be of interest to me here. We've got some default sections here on how you want to capture the data. So the default for continuous data is a mean and standard deviation and the population. But you can change this if you want to report standard error, if that's what you think you want to capture for your review, or a mean and confidence intervals. If you're capturing dichotomous data, so event data, for example, the default is to capture the number of events in the population, but you can change it to percentage in the population as well. There's also some other information here that relates more to the measurement that might be used. So you can capture some information about the scale that's being used, what that scale goes from minimum to maximum, and whether a higher score is of benefit or a lower score is of benefit. Again, this is default, you can't change this, but I will show you when we get to the data extraction form how you can add that information in. So once you've finished collecting all of the information on your template, you can click the Publish Template button. And as I said, that will make sure that the form is then published and is ready for your team. So Razia, I'm just going to hand over to you to see if there are any questions that have come through that you want to share with us. Just a couple of questions before I move on.
Right. So thank you so much for introducing yourselves. I saw a lot of introductions, and it's great to see people from a lot of different places. So regarding the questions, I have already answered few questions, and so those were mostly about whether extraction 1 or 2 is suitable for them. So as Julie has mentioned, that extraction 1, and as we saw in the template as well, that it's mainly related to interventional reviews. So if your review is not a medical and health sciences review, if you're performing a scoping review, then I would say extraction 2 would be more relevant. And if that is the case, we will also conduct a webinar on extraction 2 next month, so you can attend that. Last week we had a webinar both on extraction 1 and 2, so I have put that link, so it should be there. Yeah, and if Julie could show how to access all the recent webinars, so that would be great as well, so everyone uh, can access the recording of the webinar that they that's suitable to them. So yes, this is our knowledge base page, and here under Covidence webinars, you can have a look at all the upcoming webinars. You can register for any of the upcoming webinars. So there's extraction 2 as well, and you can also watch the recording of our previous webinars from this um, recent webinars page. And yes, you can also access the slides. So just to respond to a few more questions. So if a new extraction table is designed, does it automatically default to extraction 2? So you need to, yeah, there were a few questions around whether our extraction is set to 1 or 2. So you can check that from the settings page. So you can, yeah, in the review summary page, when you click settings, and when you go down here, you will see which extraction is selected, 1 or 2. This is where you can see which extraction is selected, and if you want to change that, you can also change it from here, and you'll see this brief explanation as well. And yes, for qualitative, for rapid literature reviews, extraction 2 would be a better choice. I'm just looking at more questions that we have received. Are these could you add fields to the check boxes? Julie, you might be able to answer this one. because I actually am not sure what you're talking. Are these fields free text? Can you add fields to be checkboxes or multiple choices?
No, so in extraction 1, we don't have checkboxes. We don't have free text fields at the moment. So this is something that the design team are busy, the product team are busy working on and making those improvements. If you want free text boxes, then you need to be using extraction 2.
Right. And there's a question about how do you capture data in the gray area, which I did not really understand.
Oh, okay. Yep. So if we go back 1 second, go back to the template. So these gray sections, as I mentioned, those gray ones are default sections. So you can't add anything to these or change them. What I'm going to do now, Razia, thank you for doing those questions. I'll move on to the data extraction form itself, and you'll see how those appear on the form, and that you can then add the data you want to capture. So I'll just continue with what I've got here now is a review where I've published the data extraction template. So you can see that the box is now white and not blue. You can see now that I'm able to start extraction. These are now clickable under my name. And so it'll say start if you haven't started data collection. You'll see the word incomplete if you've already started data collection but haven't finished. And unavailable means that someone else is working on this particular study or that the reviewer hasn't been assigned yet. So I'm going to go to this study here. Now, this is what the data extraction form looks like. Okay, this is for the data extractor. So we worked on the template, set all the different sections up that we want, and this is what it actually looks like. So what you can see on the left is the PDF that you uploaded when you were doing full text screening. If you want to look at thumbnails or outline, you've got options to do that there. You can zoom in and out of the PDF. These are all great new features. If you've got tables that aren't orientated in the right way, you can flip the PDF and you can search for keywords within the PDF as well. The data extraction form also has this great slider, so you can move across the data extraction form backwards and forwards for better viewing experience. With extraction 1, you'll see everything gets saved automatically. So whereas in extraction 2, you have to remember to save all the time, in extraction 1, everything's automatically saved for you. We've mentioned about going to the settings relating to choosing extraction 1 or extraction 2. We also need to go to the settings to make some changes to the review team and permissions as well if you want to. So I'm just going to go back to my review settings. So if you want to make changes to the data extraction form, you need to make changes to the template. And the only person who can make changes there are the template creator, unless you come to the team settings, scroll down to extraction. So if you're using extraction 2, you do not have these options to manage rules around data extraction. These rules only apply to extraction 1. So if you click on the manage rules option, you can select first reviewer for each study. So here you can allocate someone, and if I select myself, this means that for all of the included studies in my review, Julie Brown is going to be the first reviewer. And reviewer 1 has different permissions, and we'll see some of those in a moment. If you want more information, we've got a knowledge base page that's all about permissions here. You can also list members of the team who you would like to have permission to edit templates. So I can add Rachel to this list, and then Rachel will be able to edit the template as well. And I can add rules about who can resolve conflicts during consensus. So I'll add myself here. This means that only I will be able to resolve the conflicts and consensus, and no other member of the team will be able to do so. So you can set those rules, and we'll come back to what reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 can see in a moment. So I'm going back to my review. Okay. So there are these tabs that go down the center of your data extraction form. The summary tab is literally a summary. It shows you exactly what data has been captured in all the different sections. This is not editable. You can't make any changes to this. It is literally a summary of the tabs that are listed here. So if we go to the identification tab, this is where you can see everything that was in the template has now come across. So I'm just going to switch back to here. These are those default settings in the template that you couldn't change. When you go to data extraction, they're here and you can capture the information from your PDF. You can just copy and paste information across. It's very easy. So if I go down here, I might want to capture the address of the author in case I need to contact them. So I can literally copy and paste that information in. That saves you making transfer errors as well. Here's the additional information that I added. So if I go back to the template, you can see the templates here. I had added in that additional information that I wanted to capture as well. That's all here now. And again, I'm able to copy and paste directly from my PDF into the form. Methods. So if you remember when we were in our template, in the methods section, the default section we couldn't touch was about design. So this is what I mentioned. There's a drop-down list. You can select the design of the study you're extracting data from. If your design's not there, there's an other option for you. And you can decide whether the study is parallel or a crossover design, or if it's not applicable. All the information that you added about the methods section is all here, ready for you to copy and paste across as well. Similarly for the population, so those default sections, inclusion and exclusion criteria, are now here. You can copy and paste that information across from your PDF into the data extraction form. And then you've got your additional information that you added about the withdrawal rules, for example. And the baseline characteristics appears in a table. So these are characteristics that I added in about the percentage of female participants, for example, and the mean age. Now, when you first come to this page, this tab, you'll see the baseline characteristics, but you won't see these columns immediately. So if you don't see them, click on the Interventions tab, and you'll be able to add those in quite easily here. So if I add in this, click the checkbox and go back, you'll see that column visible now. Now, the interventions that we add, this is only visible to reviewer 1. So that's where I said reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 have different permissions and different views. So reviewer 1 selects the interventions that are reported in the study and creates the table. Reviewer 2 will just see the table. They won't see these options here. So this is data that I wanted to extract to do with the interventions. Now, what you find sometimes is that the paper that you're looking at reports on the intervention, but it gives it a different name. And some review teams want to capture that. Well, you can do that now in extraction 1. So if I click underneath vitamin C here, I can add ascorbic acid, for example. That information is going to be exported for you and might be relevant for your analysis. Sometimes if you've got a drug study, for example, there might be different doses and they're both associated with the same intervention. Now, all you have to do is click on the plus box. I get another column created for vitamin C. So now I could add in a dosage. For example, I could make this 500 milligrams. So to do that, you just need to click on the box of the intervention name, and then you can add an additional column. If you want to remove a column, you can use the trash icon and remove a column as well. Move on to outcomes. Outcomes are also added by the first reviewer. So again, as reviewer 1, I can click on items. If I click on an item here that already has data collected, I get this warning. So this is going to permanently delete any data. Remember I said about that previously that this would happen. So it happens here in the data extraction form as well. So I don't want to remove that data from here. With the table that's created again, you can also now add in how the outcome is reported in the PDF. So again, sometimes in PDFs we get items reported slightly differently. So this one I might want to say is length of cold. I can add that in. Again, that's going to be exported for me. And I can make changes to the time points as well. So if, for example, my template was to collect this data at the 2-month time point, but in this particular PDF, it's reported as 8 weeks. I might want to capture that information. So that's very easy to do. Again, to do that, you click on the edit item icon and change the number that appears underneath your template value. If I don't want to capture that particular time point, I can remove it from the list. And what that means is it gets rid of lots of empty cells in your final export. And if I wanted to add it back in, if it's in the template, I can simply click and add it back in. By creating all of that, we end up with the table ready for you to extract the data. If data is missing, so it's actually not reported in the paper, you can add a missing data tag. So click on a cell and you can add a missing data tag and it grays it out. And that means that you're aware that the data is missing and it's not that you've forgotten to fill it in. If you found the data at a later point, click on the cell again and you can remove that missing data tag. Again, for reviewer 1, only reviewer 1 can see this edit option. This allows you to add in that information I was talking about. So you can add in information about the scale, the range of the scale, and whether lower is better or higher is better. Also, sometimes you find in your studies that the data isn't reported as the mean and standard deviation, for example. It might only be reported as an effect estimate. You can now capture that information if you're reviewer one. So if we look at reported against, we can select effect estimate. Might be reported as a mean difference, but you can see there are numerous options for you to select from. I'm going to select placebo, save, and now you can see this has changed and I can capture the effect estimate and confidence intervals. If I want to change that back, I can just reverse these, mean and standard deviation, save, and I haven't lost any data by making those changes. So any data captured stays there. I can also create a new effect measure. So if, for example, the data is only captured as interquartile ranges, I can add that information in here as well. What I can also do is manage my reviewers. So when I come out here, I can manage the reviewers on the team, and I can change to a different person who I want to be reviewer to. And you can either transfer all the data that was on my form over to Laura, or I can start a new blank form for Laura. So I'm just going to put that back to myself. As before with other sections of the platform, I can still add tags in data extraction. I can still filter my studies in data extraction, and I can merge studies as well. So sometimes what happens is that we have multiple publications. We might have a full paper publication and a conference abstract, for example, of a study. Now we need to combine these into one publication, if you like. What you don't want to do is extract data from both documents. And that means that you might be double counting population, and then that's going to affect your overall results, and you might overestimate or underestimate the treatment effect in your review. So to merge studies that are reporting on the same trial, for example, we click on the studies we want to merge, click merge, select the study you want to be the primary study. That's usually the most complete reference. So we can see these studies are merged. There's just one ID number now and a line merging the studies, which isn't in a single study. If you want to unmerge the studies, very easy. Click on the study. The last reference will have the unmerge button. And those studies go back to their original numbers, and any data that had been captured is going to be visible again. I'm going to briefly, because we've only got 10 minutes left, I'm just going to show you how to export the data, and then we'll have a few moments left at the end for questions again. So one thing, the last step once you've extracted all your data is the consensus phase. So to look at consensus, this is when we make sure that we've got the final data set. So I'm going to go to my study, I'm going to compare. So what this does is it brings up my data extraction and Gida's data extraction. And if there are any conflicts, they're going to appear in blue. So I have to make a decision as a consensus person as to which is the correct data. And all you have to do is click on the box and it automatically populates the final data for you. So you can just go through each of these, make a selection. If there are two blanks, you can ignore those they will be exported as a blank cell. So don't worry about those, only where there's blue boxes with data in them that you need to check. So once you've got that final data set, you can go back, click on export. And as I mentioned previously, you can export as a CSV file, as an Excel file, or if you're working on a Cochrane review, you can export to RevMan, and the form, you get 4 options of files that you can export. There are webinars available and information available on exactly how to do that if you're using a Cochrane review, a step-by-step guide. I'm just going to show you what that data looks like. So the CSV file looks like this. You've got the studies and the interventions, and then the columns form all of the data extraction fields. The Excel file, the first tab gives you the list of all your studies, and then there is one study per tab for the next tabs. It gives you all the information that you extracted. And for RevMan exports, you get the CSV files and you have additional information in here. So you have specific files that are required by the Cochrane reviews that you're able to export. So that's what the export files look like. If you want to have a practice at Data Extraction 1, there's an awful lot to take in this webinar. You can go to your review page here, your list of reviews. If you scroll right down to the bottom, you can try the demo review. So there's a link here that takes you to the demo review, and you can try using Extraction 1 there and see if you think it might be useful for you. I'm just going to run one more poll now. So in this poll, having watched this webinar, and again, I acknowledge that it's an awful lot to take in, do you think that you might be using Data Extraction 1 in your Covidence review? So I'll just give you a moment or two to answer that. And just give people a second because there's an awful lot of you voting. While that voting is going on, and while Razia's just getting some questions ready, I'm going to show you on our website, we've got this section called resources. If you go down here, click on downloadable resources, we've got a downloadable ebook here on data extraction. Now this is agnostic, so it's not how to do data extraction in Covidence, but it's great resource, got lots of information about what data extraction is, some tips, it's got some templates to help you. It's a great resource, so feel free to come along and download that and share it with your colleagues. I'm going to close the poll here now. Share the results. So this is great. We've got 57% of you would like to use Data Extraction 1 for your reviews now, so that's wonderful, great news. 10% no, maybe that Data Extraction 2 is a better option for you guys, and 33% a little bit undecided. So for you, I recommend that you go and you practice using that demo tool and see. If you have any questions, then please contact the support team, and I'll leave those contact details up while Razia comes back and answers a few more questions for us in the last minutes.
Um, Thank you so much for all the questions. So I see there's so many, and a lot of them I couldn't respond. So I'll just pick a few that were that I saw a lot. So, for example, one of the questions was regarding if you have an active project, what to do with the can we transfer the forms? So basically, if you have used extraction 2, for example, for your active project, your if you switch to extraction 1, your data will not be transferred to extraction 1, but when you switch back to extraction 2, you will be able to see that data. So your data will not be lost. So another related question was that regarding quality assessment, that if you have got multiple tools. So in extraction 1, for quality assessment, you cannot use the multiple tools, but what you can do is that you can do your um, if it's an interventional review, then that would likely be ROB that you must be using. Um, but I mean, for any reason, if you're using ROB and some other quality assessment tool, then for quality assessment, I would say you would need to create your multiple quality assessment tools in extraction 2. And then you can then export your data from both extraction 1 and extraction 2. There were a lot of questions about adding p-values. So Julie, correct me if I'm wrong. So p-values, do they need to have custom measures for that, or it's there in the default uh, measures that we have in extraction 1?
So it's not in the template. You would have to add that as a default or an extra section that you would want to capture if you want to capture p-values.
Okay. All right. And there was this another question about, yeah, there were a lot of questions about kappa values, iterator reliability. So that's available for screening. It's not for extraction. And another question was about subgroup analysis. So regarding the subgroup analysis, you can, did you see the group option that Julie showed? So you can basically use that. So for example, vitamin C male, it's a subgroup. So you can use that. And then vitamin C female, that's another group. So that's how you can record the subgroup values. And how does merging the studies affect the Prisma diagram? So you'll see that your number of studies will be written, and then in bracket you'll see, for example, there were 100 studies, and then there were 10 studies that were merged. So you'll see 100 studies, and then 90 100 references from 90 studies in the bracket. So that's how it will show. There are lots of other questions which we'll get back to you um, via email if they were not answered. And yeah, thank you so much for attending the webinar.
Yep, thank you very much, Razia. Thank you, everyone. Our time is up at the moment. As Razia said, there are lots and lots of questions come through over the next today and tomorrow. We'll try and answer as many of them as we possibly can. And so look forward to seeing you at another webinar, and thank you so much for all your attention today. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.